this is Thomas Crockett with FDRA, joined today by our good friend Sandeep with TUV SUD for Kicks Over Coffee. I have my coffee here.
I have mine
Sandeep,
too. I
you
have
got
mine
yours? Good
too.
to go. The see-through coffee. There we go. We see it
Oh,
right
see, oh
there.
yeah, because the background, I guess.
Yeah, the white cup
Yeah,
there.
okay,
All
here you
right,
go. Right
cheers.
cup.
So we're ready for our conversation today on top chemical fail rates. You guys break that down for us frequently and talk to us about the top 10 fail rates. So we wanted to have you on today on Kicks Over Coffee to give a breakdown of what you guys are seeing and what we should be worried about right now. So with that, I want to turn it over to you for a second. I'm interested in how you come up with this, a little bit about TUV SUD, and what your thoughts are.
Sure, I'll be happy to. So let me pull that on my screen.
Sure. And I'll take a sip of coffee while you do.
Yeah. All right. Let me know you can see it.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay. All right. Thanks for, first of all, thanks everyone for this opportunity. Thanks for inviting me for this Kicks Over Coffee. And I'm prepared. I have a coffee. They call it kind of cold brew coffee or something. It was really good. So I think, I recommend having this cold brew coffee. But anyway, just like to say a little bit things about TUV SUD. TUV SUD is a one-stop technical solution provider. Provider powered by like 150 years of experience in this safety, quality, and sustainable business with over 1,000 plus locations worldwide and about 24,000 employees, maybe even more now. We act as a process partner to our customers whenever their business is, wherever their business is located. And we specialize in, of course, testing, product certification, inspection, auditing, system certification, knowledge services, and training in the areas of soft lines, hard lines, E&E, toys, food, health, and beauty, social compliance, inspection, capabilities around the globe. We're very proud to be part of FDRA's strategic partner as the main testing lab, and also very proud to work on updating footwear product safety guide. With that said, I guess the top 10 failures I think is very important, and especially the pair of shoes that consist of multiple component and then various materials that are used in the production. The complexity of footwear has made it very kind of vulnerable to failures when it comes to product testing. The needs of consumers continue to drive the development of the footwear industry, which is a kind of a diversified industry with a variety of styles using the wide range of materials, and that requires a number of different production processes. And for that reason, since like I say, the footwear is kind of very price sensitive. You agree? Price sensitive, and then yeah. I think the chemical testing is also very expensive. So taking care of the failures at the early stage is very important.
And
so,
I know you mentioned too, Sandeep, a lot of different industries there that you work with, and you said footwear is kind of particularly at risk. What is it about footwear that makes it such an area of concern when it comes to these fail rates?
Yeah. So I mean, that's, as I said, footwear has so many components. Some hidden components, inside out. A lot of different parts. So there could be a lot of chemicals that are being used during the process. So I think, and getting to know what are the top 10. We've been doing this for you. I think every quarter. Last quarter we didn't do it. Last year we didn't do it because of the pandemic, but it's an eye opener. I see a lot of failures. So I hope you guys you can see my screen. The failures.
I see the analysis. If we can go, if there's a next one where we can see the actual breakdown. I was going to ask you about if you could post up what the top 10 are, or what you're
right,
seeing.
So here are the top 10 failure for this quarter, this April, May, June that we have seen, I can see there are antimony, dimethyl formamide, chromium is always there, chromium 6, and then formamide and quinoline, pH, and other chemicals. Now we kind of break down in terms of where this chemical come from. The important thing is, like, you can ask me that, how we put together this list. I mean, there's no specific plan to kind of get these top 10 failures. Basically, the sample comes to our lab for testing and over the year, and we use those results. Last year, this results gets deposited into our system called StarLimbs, and we kind of take it from there, no matter what sample is it. And it could be apparel, footwear, home textiles, accessories, and by the way, textiles can be used on footwear, as you all know, and so we use footwear, apparel, and also some raw materials. So that's how we get all, the sampling is all about. And these are the main failure that we have seen this year. We can go into details of each by the material itself.
It's really interesting too, you talking about all of the components in footwear. Oftentimes we get people that want to kind of lump footwear just in with apparel. And we see in other areas, trade policy, for example, totally different products. You have a whole different HTS tariff code schedule for footwear than you do for apparel, and they're different in many ways. And I think that's a really interesting point you make, is just the risk with all these different components that are going into footwear, just how complex it is. And you can see this is a great breakdown of this, the top 10 here. Is there anything on this list that surprised you? Maybe looking, back at other years that you're like, wow, I can't believe that's in the top 10.
Yeah, I think I'm going to show that. That's a good question. Maybe that's further down before we talk about all the by materials. Yeah. So this is 2018. This is what we did for you, 2018. You can see all those chemicals that kind of failed. Then 2019, this is 2019. And then this is this year, 50, all of them. So no major change, but what I can see that pH, I think, the pH, chromium, and I think other are always the same. I think pH, chromium, and DMF, they are pretty much the same. Antimony and quinoline this year is new. Okay. So I think depending on what material we get and how we test, what we're seeing is the trend wise that these chemicals, the pH, from DMF and chromium, is always there, but there's some new other things here and there based on the percentages.
Well, that Chrome 6 jumps out to me too, because there's so much under Prop 65. We pay a lot of close attention to that out in California. These notices, lawsuits over Chrome 6, and we've seen a lot of action against companies for Chrome 6 and leather footwear. So it's really interesting to see that as the number 3 on the list, and that's an issue. We're talking about that on our weekly calls. We're going to be talking about that issue. We do those every Tuesday at 2 p.m. But that's interesting that's always one of the top failed chemicals.
It is the nature of the leather, the tanning process, and if things are not done properly, is basically it's the chromium 3 gets oxidized into chromium 6. So it's all about how you maintain the chromium 3 level. So it's an issue. It's always going to be there, but the supply chain needs to be vigilant about this.
And then I'm looking at go back one
Sorry,
second, Sandeep. I'm
sorry.
looking at the fail rates
All
for
right, fine.
that too. So what does that mean? Now this is almost 27% of a fail rate for antimony. What does that
Okay,
mean?
that's a good question. How does what do we do? How do we calculate the fail rate, right? So the fail rate is basically, as I said, whatever the sample comes to our lab, we do that. But the fail rates are based on the item itself. Suppose during Q2, there are 1,000 times of the test on antimony, and 300 of this out of 1,000 failed. Then the fail rate that we calculate is 300 over 1,000 is 30%. Got it? Same thing about similarly in Q2, there are 200 times of the chromium 6 was tested, and 20 of these 200 failed. So there were 20 divided by 200 is about 10% of time failure. So you might also ask me, the requirement column here, where do we get this requirement? How do we use this requirement? Where do we get this requirement column? So basically, this requirement kind of showed that here we are the typical requirements that are used in the industry. They are not FDRA's RSL. As I said, we take the sample, we take the results from our results bank that we have, and sometimes we most of the time we followed actually brand RSL as a requirement. Some brand may have chromium 6 requirement at 2.5. There are many brands. 3 is the industry requirement. 2.5 is the above and beyond. They're very much cautious about it. So some failed at 2.5. So suppose there are 19 results out of the 20 I mentioned, the 20 time, right? 20% time failed, but 19 result is based on the 3 ppm, and 1 result may be based on 2.5, but still it is 20 failures. So the 20 divided by 200 is 20%. That's how we calculate the failure rate.
So do we want to go into, I noticed we've got different materials here. Do we want to talk about that for a minute? Kind of look at some of the different materials and where we've got some high concerns here.
Right. So this is about textiles, and we found antimony, quinoline, and pH. So as you know, that antimony uses as a catalyst polymerization of polyester, flame retardant, and other like pigments and alloys. This antimony is really not a U.S. federal law. It's recognized by U.S. The Washington state, basically. Antimony, you don't fail it, you just report it. But when you have the limit really high, your job would be to kind of make sure, working with the supply chain, the factory, finding out the source to minimize at the level, or use alternative. I mean, it is used for polyester anyway, so nothing you can do, but you can reduce the level. So because working with the suppliers, and then it is also on the rich HBAC candidate list. So onto the candidate list, it could go to the Annex 17 one day, So, but the candidate list is to making sure that that Europe is looking into this. Same thing with the quinoline, found as a residue of dyes, and is regulated at the rich Annex 17. So it's forbidden. You have to when you have quinoline, you have to make sure that you don't have it. You have to bring it under the level, under the requirement.
And that's for the EU?
Yes, for the EU.
All right, so that's taking a snapshot of textiles. If you're making something with textiles in it, shoes with textiles, that's what you need to know right now. Can we turn to maybe leather, or what's another material that we're really looking
I'm just going to quickly talk about the pH also here.
Oh yeah, yes,
sure. Yeah, pH is very much of it's a non-industry standard in US. I'm sorry, not a federal requirement in US, but it's pretty much industry standard. Everybody follows, especially for the children. children's product, you don't want the skin rashes and everything. So every brand follows the pH at a level of 7 or 6. And it is also, when it comes to product like whiter, whiter or lighter garment, pH, higher pH, alkaline pH could be contributed to a yellowing if you have a yellowing component already there, like BHT. So you don't want the pH to be high. And then in China, it is a requirement. China always goes up and beyond. In a GB 18401, the pH failure is a no-no. Same thing with coated textile, like any textile with a water repellent, coating. DMFA, DMSC are solvent that are used,
and that's a pretty hot topic, right? DMF, or a pretty big chemical, right? That we're seeing.
Yeah, they are heavily regulated in EU compared to US, as you can see here. They're EU regulated by Annex 17, and then you can be the candidate list, both of these guys. So,
and I think I remember DMFA with Prop 65, maybe one of the recent there's 900 plus chemicals that are, and that's different. That's a reporting to consumers statute, but they always add new chemicals. I feel like that's one that's pretty recent on the list for California. I know we've talked about that before, so that may be another thing companies want to take a look at.
Definitely to look at. Same thing with leather. No surprise. Chromium 6, we talked about that. pH, I'm not going to talk about the same thing. The chromium, definitely, it's everywhere. It's regulated. US is a state level. Prop 65 you just mentioned, and in the REACH also, Annex 17, as well as GB 30585, which is the children footwear. So regulated. And pentachloro phenol, PCP, is kind of used as a preservative and impregnation agent for textiles, and is regulated in Europe too. But I don't think we have found that much in a PCP. It's not a hot, nothing to be concerned about, but definitely here we need to be concerned. The plastics, material that are used in like footwear, we found arsenic. Arsenic as a preservative, also as a pesticides, and synthetic fiber paints, inks, trims, all this kind of stuff regulated by US laws, at a state level, which is basically, again, Washington, and other states, and at the GB, China GB 30585. And phthalates, everybody knows phthalates. It's a concern all over. I think we should have mentioned the phthalates also part of regulated at the CalProp 65 level, and as well as CPSIA. We're big on phthalates. I think in US, within Washington State and CPSIA and CalProp, there are 9 phthalates that are regulated. But in Europe, there are many other. There are 17 other phthalates that are regulated.
17
other phthalates. Yeah, total about 24 phthalates that are regulated worldwide.
And that's another one where we're really hearing a lot of companies talk about Chrome 6 and leather, but then over the years, sandals, plaintiffs will look for ballots in sandals that are made of plastic over in California, and so that's another area where there's a lot of focus.
Yep. So and then MCCP is a medium chain chlorinated paraffin, and it uses flame retardant mainly, and is also used as a fat liquoring agent in leather. So it is also regulated by EU, not in this country. But if I remember when I was in my previous job, we used to sell it in many different countries. And if it fails for MCCP, we will not sell those products in Europe, but we will sell it in US because
it's not regulated.
There's not regulated here. So this is also the supply chain needs to be, or retailer brand needs to be kind of thinking about, how to maximize their testing dollar. If then we have coated materials. I think I think they're a similar failure, so not going to spend a whole lot of time here. EVA that are used in soles and stuff, right? EVA used at outsole. Textile material could be used for inner sole, inner lining.
So this goes back to the whole components issue you were talking about. We're focused on the textile shoes, but then we got to worry about the soles or the inner lining and what chemicals could be found in that.
And coated material could be used on upper leather and that kind of stuff. So EVA, I think that all the results are similar. The formamide, DMSC that we talked about. There's another one here, 2-phenol, 2-propanol. This is just an industry practice, EVA formula, especially in Europe and also here. So this is not regulated here, but people are looking into this thing. Metal, if you use the metal things, metal things in your boot. Then arsenic is something we talked about. Nickel failure, we already know. Nickel is how this is regulated in Europe, part of heavy metals. So these are the failures that we found so far. And yeah.
Go back to that slide too, the one over the different chemical safety regimes you need to comply with. This brings up I know that this just made me think of something that's why it's really important. A whole nother issue. It's not, it doesn't seem like it's related, but what we're working on is intellectual property protection, because you see all these standards that brands have to comply with, and they work with testing labs to ensure they're complying with that. But then you've got these counterfeits coming in that unsuspecting consumers are buying that don't necessarily meet these chemical safety standards. They probably don't meet them. And so that's a whole nother challenge for us, is to really, and that's one thing we're working on, is efforts to fight the surge of counterfeitings. But these consumers that buy, they've got things like dupes online where they see something and they think, maybe they think it's harmless, but there's so much that goes into this to ensuring that a product meets the right standards. And so that's a whole nother dimension. It's kind of a separate issue, but it's something we're thinking about too. So you've really kind of broken down for us, Sandeep, just, all the that goes into this, and I appreciate you doing that. I have one more question for you too. It's a difficult time for companies. There's so many supply chain challenges. There's so many costs right now, just unbelievable and unprecedented issues we're dealing with for costs. But at the same time, companies want to do the right thing, and they want to ensure that their products meet these standards. Are there some tips that you can give us on how we can best do that? Save money, but also ensure compliance here.
Sure. It's definitely a very good questions. It's not easy to kind of deal with sometimes, but I have thought about a couple of things a couple of things in my mind. Basically, it's just knowing your supply chain is the most important thing in my mind. Who are you dealing with? Are they have some do they have some kind of certification? Do they know what they're doing? And then be aware of the type of material being used and source of these materials. Then understand the items, the components that could be of high risk, and then confirm the safety of these items from the suppliers. Like in the footwear manufacturer, they don't necessarily make everything. They buy it from the sub-suppliers. So how are they actually maintaining the quality, maintaining the regulatory hurdles. So the best way to save money would be kind of, to me, would be rely on the component testing and traceability when it comes to the final product, which reduces the redundant testing. I see, the companies are going global. The regulations are on the rise, as you just said. And, when they're global, that we deal with more regulation. So speed to the market is today's demand. So time is kind of essence. Um, the product needs to be first time right, and at the same time it needs to be cost effective, high quality, safe and compliant, and all this stuff. So what does that mean? This simply means that we cannot afford to have failure at the end, at the final product stage. So chemical testing and data management as one of the important contributors to the speed to the market. And as we know, the chemical testing is very much expensive. So we really need to focus on how to test and comply with a smarter approach, not just testing the component stage, testing at the final stage, and all this kind of stuff. That addresses the kind of supply chain, the visibility, and the promote sustainability as well, in my mind. If the companies are healthy, if the factories are certified properly, if we have a visibility what they're doing, then to me, that's also a component of sustainability. I think, I like to take that opportunity to tell something about our chemical data management service, which kind of addresses the all that I just said. It's known as chemical data management service. It's an artificial intelligence powered intelligence system that kind of predicts the automated bomb comparison algorithm to reduce redundant testing. It automatically finds out, okay, this is tested before, so no need to have this testing done on the same component. It goes by component. So you don't have to say within 6 months or 3 months, whatever time limit we set, you don't have to test it again. And then it's automatic supplier ranking within the system. You can rank the supplier.
It's all automated.
All automated within systems. Once you have to feed the system with all the data and everything, and with your supply chain, you can build the tier 1, tier 2, and you can also put the lab in a different lab within the system. So basically, it's the supplier ranking. You can do the manual ranking. If you have the data, you can dump the data. We can take the rating from there. But if the rating goes down through testing, you can manually degrade them from tier 1 to tier 2 and have them prove through testing to go through to go back to the tier 1. So all within the system, and it computes the passing probability by itself, so that you don't have to. This is called part of the risk analysis, because one item could pass now, maybe may not pass later, but depending on the data that we have, the system can predict. And your entire RSL system will be on the portal, so that you have a visibility. The supplier would know what they're testing exactly, and then the good thing about this thing is, based on the sample, it spits out the what exactly needs to be tested. You don't have to test the entire gamut of footwear protocol testing. And
interesting.
Yeah, it is automatically, the test package will be assigned automatically. And another cool feature is that it has the what if analysis. What is, like, say for your lead requirements is now 100, now go back to 90. Now the past season you have tested many samples at 100. Now we can go back and see at 90, what are those samples could fail. You might use those batch again and to sell to the next season. Oh, now at 90, you have this kind of samples might fail. So you can directly send the samples to the nearest lab from that database for retesting and that kind of stuff. So there are a lot of advantages. As I said, chemical testing is expensive, and the best way to do this is starting at the component level and make sure there's a traceability is there, so that at the final product level, where the product came from and that it did not actually fail. So that's the smart way of kind of saving money and test and building confidence within the supply chain.
Well, thank you so much, Sandeep. That's really helpful. All of this is helpful, but especially as we look at all the challenges we face and, ways we can save during this time, and hearing about the tips and the tools that you have on that is really great. Very interesting discussion. I've really enjoyed this Kicks Over Coffee. I hope everybody listening has too. And Sandeep, I want to thank you again for coming on today, and appreciate all your work on product and chemical safety.